And it is wonderful to see all of you. I guess you all know why I came this week. It's no secret. Nothing was going to stop me from wishing happy birthday to Her Majesty and meeting George, who was adorable. Michelle and I had the privilege to visit with Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh yesterday. I can't tell you what we talked about. I can tell you that I hope I am such a engaging lunch partner when I am 90. And I'd like to thank Her Majesty for letting us use one of her horticultural halls for this town hall. I also just came from touring Shakespeare's Globe, which is a good way to start your Saturday morning. Today is the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. And as he once wrote, brevity is the soul of wit, so I will try to be brief on the front end so we have time for a conversation. These are some of the favorite things that I do when I travel around the world, is just have a chance to meet with young people and hear from them directly. It's inspiring to me. It gives me new ideas, and I think underscores the degree to which young people are rising up in every continent to seize the possibilities of tomorrow. Now, whenever I get together with leaders of the United States and UK, you hear a lot about the special relationship and the shared values and interests that bind us together, and the way that our cooperation makes the world safer and more secure and a more just and prosperous place, and all of that is true. We go back a pretty long way, the UK and the US. We've had our quarrels. There was that whole tea incident, and the British burned my house down. But we made up. It was for the tea. Ultimately, we made up and ended up spilling blood on the battlefield together side by side against fascism and against tyranny, for freedom and for democracy. And from the ashes of war, we led the charge to create the institutions and initiatives that sustained a prosperous peace. NATO, Bretton Woods, the Marshall Plan, the EU. The joint efforts and sacrifices of previous generations of Americans and Brits are a big part of why we've known decades of relative peace and prosperity in Europe, and that in turn has helped to spread peace and prosperity around the world. And think about how extraordinary that is. For more than 1,000 years, this continent was darkened by war and violence. It was taken for granted. It was assumed that that was the fate of man. Now, that's not to say that your generation has had it easy. Both here in the United States, your generation's grown up at a time of breathtaking change. You've come of age through 9/11 and 7/7. You've had friends go off to war. You've seen families endure recession. The challenges of our time, economic inequality and climate change, terrorism and migration, all these things are real. And in an age of instant information, where TV and Twitter can feed us a steady stream of bad news, I know that it can sometimes seem like the order that we've created is fragile, maybe even crumbling. Maybe the center cannot hold. And we see new calls for isolationism or xenophobia. We see those who would call for rolling back the rights of people, people hunkering down in their own point of view and unwilling to engage in a democratic debate. And those impulses, I think we can understand. They are reactions to changing times and uncertainty. But when I speak to young people, I implore them, and I implore you, to reject those calls to pull back. I'm here to ask you to reject the notion that we're gripped by forces that we can't control. And I want you to take a longer and more optimistic view of history and the part that you can play in it. I ask you to embrace the view of one of my predecessors, President John F. Kennedy, who once said, "Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man, and man can be as big as he wants." That's how, since 1950, the global average life expectancy has grown by 25 years. Since 1990, we've cut extreme poverty around the world in half. That's how, over the past 100 years, we've come from a world where only a small fraction of women could vote to one where almost every woman can. That's how, since just the year 2000, we've come from a world without marriage equality to one where it's a reality in nearly 24 countries, including here and in the United States. Every few months, I speak with a new group of White House interns. They're roughly your age. They come in for 6 months. They are assigned to various aspects of the White House. And I often talk to them about the fact that if you could choose one moment in history in which to be born, and you didn't know ahead of time what you were to be, you didn't know whether you were a man or a woman, what nationality, what ethnicity, what religion, who your parents were, what class status you might have. If you could choose one time in history where the chances that you led a fulfilling life were most promising, you choose right now, this moment. Because the world, for all of its travails, for all of its challenges, has never been healthier, better educated, wealthier, more tolerant, less violent, more attentive to the rights of all people than it is today. That doesn't mean we don't have big problems. That's not a cause for complacency, but it is a cause for optimism. You are standing at a moment where your capacity to shape this world is unmatched. What an incredible privilege that is. And you've never had better tools to make a difference, to forge a better UK and a better Europe and a better world. So my primary message today is going to be to reject pessimism and cynicism. Know that progress is possible, that our problems can be solved. Progress requires the harder path of breaking down barriers and building bridges and standing up for the values of tolerance and diversity that our nations have worked and sacrificed to secure and defend. Progress is not inevitable, and it requires struggle and perseverance and discipline and faith. But that's the story of how we won voting rights and women's rights and workers' rights and civil rights and immigration rights and gay rights. Because of those who came before us, often risked their lives to give us the chance to know something better. That's what gives me so much hope about your generation. So many of you are driven by that same impulse. You are a generation that has seen integration and globalization not as threats but as opportunities for education and exploration and employment and exchange. You're a generation who sees differences of pluralism and diversity not as a curse but as a great gift. And that's one of the reasons why the United States has invested in young leader initiatives around the globe, in Africa and Latin America, Southeast Asia, and right here in the UK. So last summer we launched Young Leaders UK, and it's grown from 4 students in Plymouth to more than 1,000 nationwide. A diverse group of Brits aged 18 to 30 from government and NGOs and the private sector, including many of you here today. I know Ambassador Barzan has held town hall workshops at more than 100 high schools with more than 14,000 sixth formers. He's worked to create more of the U.S. Embassy exchange programs that have graduated alumni like Margaret Thatcher and Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. Because we want you to have the tools, connections, and resources that you need to make yourselves change agents, the change that you are looking for in the world. So your young leaders like Michael Sawney, who's here today. Where's Michael? Just right behind. There he is. Michael was inspired by America's Rock the Vote voter registration initiative, so he started his own Bite the Ballot, initiative here in the UK. And he spent time in Greensboro, North Carolina, where he learned about our civil rights movement. And he said, I have a new understanding of the meaning of perseverance, resilience, and delayed gratification, about fighting for change you may not live to see, but your children will live to see. Fighting for change that you may not live to see, but your children will live to see. That's what this is all about. That's what we are all about, whether in the Cold War or World War, movements for economic or social justice, efforts to combat climate change. Our best impulses have always been to leave a better world for the next generation. Mariam Ahmed is here today. Where's Mariam? Where are you? Are you also behind me? There's Mariam up top. It's that impulse that compels a young leader like Mariam to say, I may have grown up one of 8 in a small West London house, but I'm going to use the education I got at Oxford to help any child have the same opportunities that I have. And Ali Hashim is here. Where's Ali? Right there. It's this same impulse that's led Ali to say, I may have fled Syria as a child, but now that I'm in elective office, I'm going to use my power to help other refugees like me. And Becca Bunce is here today. Where's Becca? There's Becca. It's that impulse that compels a young leader like Becca to say that as a woman with a disability, I may have fallen down at times, but people who believed in me picked me up. And I'm going to pay it forward by fighting for people with disabilities and against violence against women, because I believe the world can be a better place. You can't help but be inspired by the stories of young people like these, both in the United States and the United Kingdom. And think of all the good that we can do together. Think of all the good that we have yet to accomplish. There is not a challenge on this planet that our two countries don't take on together. And as long as your generation nurtures that special relationship and learns from one another and stands together, I'm confident the future is brighter than the past and that our best days are still ahead of us. So, with that, let's have a conversation. All right, you guys were ready.
You know, we give them practically nothing. It's like a one-way street. You ever hear the words trade imbalance? It's like this. It's like this. Got to end, folks. Got to end.